Okay, thank you everyone for joining us. So I'm really delighted to welcome Gavin Hitchcock for our next talk, short paper, and I'm just going to hand over to you, Gavin, when you're happy, and I'll give you a 5-minute warning.
Right, ready to go. Oh, 5-minute warning when I start? No.
No.
5 minutes. Okay. That quote's just up there for your edification at the beginning. And this talk is a strangely non-linear sort of talk. It's a fugue, kind of fugue on 3 words, the title. And that's a little summary of the abstract. We draw a comparative analysis of creativity in mathematics, science, and art, and consider how this relates to the beasts on one hand and AIs on the other hand. Imagine. Go on, make up an idea. A fantastic idea that nobody ever thought of before. Have you done it? Create an image in your mind of something no one has ever seen before. Make up a sound no one ever heard before. Make up a story about fantastic beasts unlike any before. You can do it. You know you can do it. 30,000 years ago, humans did it, and they left us hints of their myth-making and their inner vision. What's more, you know beforehand that you can do it. And after you've done it, you know it was you that did it. And even more important, you cannot help doing it, and you love doing it. It's what you are. Artists do this as a matter of course. It almost defines great art, I think, that it changes what it perceives, and we are changed when we perceive the artwork. Scientists live by 2, as we here all know. Induction is an act of the imagination, and ideas are crucial, especially when models mislead and theories are totally inadequate. There's no substitute for bright ideas. And at the heart of that most deductively rigorous of disciplines, mathematics, it's actually no different. Induction, imagination, intuition are fundamental. Mathematicians wave their hands all the time when they talk. And I'm not talking mathematics, so I don't need to wave. But we're invoking unseen images, and we're inviting people to peer into this abstract world that we can see so clearly. I try to be a musician and an artist and a craftsman, but it's in mathematics that I feel that charge of creative excitement. Mostly in the past, actually. Now I do other things, history of mathematics, but that's when it's most strong. And when I felt an idea coming on, I couldn't sleep. And yet sleep was the most productive activity of all. When, in my postgraduate years, those poor souls, chemists and physicists, spent 10 hours a day in a lab slogging away, as I saw it, I would play my guitar for most of the day, and the work was going on in my head. Most mathematicians will testify that the best ideas happen when least expected. And when they come, they're fully formed. Not in detail, but they're there. And I know by intuition before that there's something beautiful out there. And then once I have it, I know it is right. And I want to rush to incarnate it in a body of theory, and with words and symbols and definitions and theorems and formal proofs. And then I want to set it lovingly in the mathematical garden and see it grow and put it to work. I want the power of that idea to be communicated to others. So the idea and the word/symbol and the power is a trinity of creativity that I will return to later in this talk. The idea seemingly comes from nowhere. It's timeless. And it's surely been wrought somewhere. It must have been wrought in secret in the womb of nature. I'm quoting a psalm, which I won't tell you which, and knit together in the depths of my being. It could not have been granted to me unless I had previously immersed myself in the work of others and in the whole abstract well, in the abstract world of topology as well, and in the story of maths making historically. But there is an absolute conviction that the idea is mine. It's a strange and wonderful alchemy of my being who I am. The idea has come into being, and yet simultaneously I welcome it as a gift from heaven. It's often said that mathematicians are Platonists on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, and not on the other days. It's not that we can't make up our minds. The fact is that on those other days, we experience the joy and the challenge of inventing. Inventing, which is consciously defining, constructing, connecting, reasoning, proving, refuting, correcting, refining. Have I repeated any of those? We feel the burden of genuine choice. This creature concept could have been otherwise. But on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays, we feel that we've discovered something of eternal truth. And we watch our creatures setting off in their own ways, living independently of us in a world shared with other mathematicians. It's very like the miracle of a newborn baby, a biological product, and yet so very much more. It's our baby, we feel, and yet the sense of otherness and the grateful awareness of gift are overwhelming. The child will, and we must truly want this, will go eventually and find its own way and live its own life. And my child and my mathematical creatures are of me, and yet they must transcend me. They do. Novelists and dramatists say much the same about their characters. They can be fiercely protective. If you tell them what they must make their characters do, they will say their character will do what it wants to do. I'm not going to write in my next novel, make the guy get married or make him become a Christian or whatever else. No way. Ideas, Francis Petraza said, are almost like aliens trying to come into the real world, and we're just pregnant with them. Yet I know as surely as I know that I am, that it is I who creates and procreates, who thinks and makes and imagines, and mysteriously my being grows with my imagining, and both depend on my imitating. So now, imitate. Imitate a pig. Imitate a blackbird. Pick up my accent. It's actually Zimbabwe. Imitate a hated politician or a loved celebrity, or imitate Donald Trump, or imitate Christ. Copying mannerisms, following footsteps, sitting at the feet. When we all began, we were imitating our parents, siblings, animals, friends and peers, characters in books, role models, and teachers. I imitated my mathematical forebears and mentors, and eventually my students. Because while I hope the students are imitating me to some extent, I want them to transcend me. And with Plato, I want to point them and my grandchildren to the light, to the transcendent good beyond me. Nature provides the raw material then for our understanding of ourselves in our science, art, music, and mathematics, but all the time and all the way, imitation moves us, goads us onward and upward to transcendence. Nothing is invented, said somebody. You know who he is. You'll know why he said it. It's written in nature first. Originality consists of returning to the source. The great architect, Antonio Gaudi, but his extraordinary creations bear the unmistakable stamp of his own inner being, in communion with the divine origin as well as deep contemplation of the natural world. The greatest painters, too, have spent countless days copying old masters, drawing people and animals from life, studying anatomy and effects of gravity and light on cloth. But then they face the daunting challenge of a blank canvas, bare canvas, and they feel their heavy dependence on the muse. Portrait painters have an uncanny way of probing beneath the surface features of the character of a sitter. Great cartoonists will draw a caricature of a politician that owes much to the physiognomy but delves far deeper. Satirists have a similar terrifying gift. I'm going to make a claim now that cartoonists and those authors and illustrators who have a profound empathy with children and animals have a lot more to teach us about the inner life of animals than we often think. Scientists undergo an arduous apprenticeship in the practices and skills of their discipline before they're fit to contribute original work. Even then, they must spend long days in tedious routines, imitate. When transcendence happens, it can feel like Kepler's and Einstein's thinking the thoughts of God after him. But even Galileo's original abstract model of a falling stone was a huge feat of the imagination after he had spent a long time sitting, as he said, before the feet of nature as a little child. In the observing and the very questions asked, something transcendent is already happening. And this is akin to the creative imagination of an artist, where ideas have this strange quality of earthed divinity, of half-expected visitants, of messy miracles, like a newborn baby. The songwriter Nick Cave, responding to song lyrics produced by ChatGPT in the style of Nick Cave, it was supposed to be, was forthright about the difference between a clever imitation, a replication, a kind of burlesque, he called it, and the songs that emerge from the inner life of a true artist after long and costly gestation in human life and suffering. Here he is. I'm going to quote him at length because I think it's just glorious stuff. The process of songwriting is a blood and guts business, here at my desk, that requires something of me to initiate the new and fresh idea. It requires my humanness. What that new idea is, I don't know, but it's out there somewhere, searching for me. In time, we will find each other. ChatGPT has no inner being. It has been nowhere. It has endured nothing. It has not had the audacity to reach beyond its limitations, and hence it doesn't have the capacity for a shared transcendent experience. ChatGPT's melancholy role is that it is destined to imitate and can never have an authentic human experience. Writing a good song, he goes on, is not mimicry or replication or pastiche. It is the opposite. It is an act of self-murder that destroys all that one has strived to produce in the past. It is those dangerous, heart-stopping departures that catapult the artist beyond the limits of what he or she recognizes as their known self. And this is part of the authentic creative struggle. This is what we humble humans can offer, that AIs can only mimic. The transcendent journey of the artist that forever grapples with his or her own shortcomings. This is where human genius resides, deeply embedded within, yet reaching beyond those limitations, transcending. Mathematicians have more of the algorithmic, the machine, the logical machine about them than most artists, but even I know what Cave means by the grappling and the creative struggle and those dangerous, heart-stopping departures that catapult us beyond known limits. I know that mathematical creation starts by being embedded within concrete realities, yet it reaches far beyond them. Here is Richard Courant. I won't stop to explain who he is, but a great mathematician and physicist. Living mathematics rests upon a fluctuation between the antithetical powers of intuition and logic, the individuality of grounded problems, and the generality of far-reaching abstractions. And we ourselves must prevent the development being forced to only one pole of this life-giving antithesis. And here is the great philosopher Alfred North Whitehead. I'm only going to quote the second part of this orally. The paradox is now fully established that the utmost abstractions are the true weapons with which to control our thought of concrete fact. So all truly creative work begins with humility, with childlike imitation, to which I want to add two other metaphors of C.S. Lewis, reflection and imitation. But the imitations are launch pads for fresh flights of imagination, and the reflections are tinged with the grain of each artist's self and refracted into new colours. What's assimilated is then reconstituted by a unique personhood into novel substance. And AI can brilliantly impersonate a super-informed, super-logical, super-mannered human. It can be a great assistant in doing mathematics. It can access data and process algorithms far faster than I can, than anyone can. It may even present as a conscious, self-aware, thinking or loving creature. But it is, for now anyway, all imitation of human discourse and behavior. Even the apparent innovations of an AI are just recombinations of countless imitations. Well, many animals also seem to mimic us. Dogs may even convince us that they share our emotions and moral sense. The reality is much more complex, and we've heard quite a lot about that today and yesterday. But there is real empathy going on. What we love about animals and very young children is their artless being what they are, no guile. They play their essential role in our human makeup and identity, for we are part of the same story. They are somehow incorporated within the Imago Dei. Children respond instantly to animal stories. Animals have so much to teach us about ourselves and about God, about the Creator. We cannot name ourselves without naming them. In Imago Dei, we are called to be both immanent with them and transcendent, responsible for them, leading them in the great doxology. Now, this is not anthropocentrism. A good conductor does not dominate or subdue an orchestra, but draws out its soul. Biological evolution certainly produces novelties over vast periods of time. The cognitive revolution, followed by rapid cultural evolution, catapulted Homo sapiens into worlds of higher orders: art, music, proto-science, myth-making, and math-making. Mathematics is very old, and it began, of course, with imitation, reflection, and assimilation. Tallying, decorating, classifying shapes, observing patterns and cycles in the sky, and exuberant creativity emerged. It's evident on the oral and the written records and artifacts of all cultures. Some non-human animals might even tally up to 5 and display the seeds of creative activity. But mathematicians construct the abstract number continuum, place it all on solid logical axiomatic foundations, and go on to build beautiful abstract theories of infinite cardinal and ordinal numbers. Homo erectus made tools that didn't change for 1,000,000 years. We are restlessly seeking transcendence where they did not. Our children imitate us and then surprise and enchant us with their unexpected idiosyncrasies, their hybridized new words. I write down some of my grandchildren's words. I've never heard them before, I know what they mean. They are actually brilliant acts of creation. Fantastic ideas they have. The rock painters long ago learnt to imitate the lines of the animals that they knew so well, but then they transcended the visual imitation. And they actually captured something of the inner life of the beast and their relationship with the beast and with the unseen realities behind the beast. If, as Whitehead observed, abstract mathematics gives us the true weapons to control our thought of concrete fact, then surely we can't give in to the materialists and regard myths as merely fictions. For there we may find the true weapons to guide our thought about facts of a higher order. The ancient animal myths may be more critical to our understanding ourselves than we know. Imitation, as with unconscious AIs, can masquerade as being. In our myths, maths, history, art, and science, we construct models and images of reality. And the better the imitation, the more sophisticated the model, the more danger there is of mistaking the physical or mental image for the reality behind it. Now, this distinction is never made by beasts or machines. And it was probably only very recently in the evolution of human consciousness that it's been made. That's the distinction between the image and the reality. Applied mathematicians and scientists, immersed in their model world, often slip imperceptibly into speaking as if the model is the reality. This is especially true in our day of cosmologists. Just watch them and listen to them. Every statement about the physical universe ought to be implicitly, at least, prefaced with according to our standard current provisional model. And so should many statements about animals. The modern scientific enterprise began with a confession of ignorance. It needs to return to the stance of Galileo's child. Good mathematical modelers have a slogan: all models are wrong. It takes a while to think what that really means. Seriously, mathematical modelers take this very seriously. Working in an epidemiological modeling center for some years, I learned that good science always quantifies uncertainty. During COVID-19, modelers were forced to give policymakers best and worst case scenarios and recommendations with minimal data, poorly collected data, collected in a rush. They would deliver very tentative projections and then be horrified to find these treated as certain and to have lives and careers staked on them. Terrifying. The model is not the reality. Our best imitations can become fake realities, as starkly highlighted in AI impersonations of caring humans. And the difference between behavior we call caring or kind and what the Bible calls the love of God is illustrated in Paul's famous passage on love. There are no exhortations or imperatives, no urging to do or be anything. He simply asserts the supremacy of love that comes from God and describes what it is like. Love is patient. Children learn to say the right words and adopt the right manners long before they actually become respectful, grateful, kind, or loving beings, and this is an important part of their moral development. In a similar way, we learn arithmetical tables, we memorize grammatical rules and poems, we learn musical theory, and they're valuable steps, but we have to transcend them to become a lover of mathematics and literature and music. Now, our biological models of beasts are totally inadequate to capture more than a crude outward material features. The zoology is not the quiddity. Studying an animal's behavior objectively, even embedded in its natural environment, is quite different from entering imaginatively into the landscape, the tactile, audio, visual, and olfactory world and living experience of the animal as a subject and achieving sympathetic identification. It's a tough task. It's included in the challenge of Genesis to name the animals. Our naming may approach ever nearer the animal, but it never gets there. But what is it like being that animal? Go on, be a badger. Don't simply imitate. Don't content yourself with merely imagining. Be a shaman. Evoke the beast within you. Immerse yourself physically in the landscape of the beast. Children do it best. One of my favorite books is Charles Foster's Being a Beast. He summons all his experience and knowledge as a biologist and vet, and his reading in physiology and neuroscience to feed his imagination. But crucially, he spent weeks together with his 8-year-old son digging and living naked in a badger set and eating worms. And he gets close to other animals too, but I won't tell you what. So our best imitations can be fake realities, as starkly highlighted by AI impersonations. Where have I got to? My last slide, almost, not quite. I won't tell you about butterflies and moths and being an insect because there's no time. But Charles Foster's physical immersion is a rare strategy. What happens when a brilliant imagination and a lucid gift of communication is brought to bear on what it's like to be a beast? Well, leaving the dressed up animals aside, C.S. Lewis's chapter on animal pain is helpful. And in his novel, That Hideous String, whoops, am I going backwards? Yes, I am. Sorry. We meet other, in The Hideous Strength, we experience the emotional life of Bultitude the bear, brilliantly described, strongly recommended. And in these other novels, we meet non-sentient life elsewhere, on Mars and Venus. I'll skip a bit there. So these characters in novels or humanoid AIs or concept of mathematical theory or the names we use to name animals have a kind of life, but it's life of a different ontological order to that which we share with the beasts. Sub-creation, we could call it. That we, being animals, can bring such life into being is a great privilege. Imagine an artist painting a picture of an artist painting a picture, and then imagine the picture within the picture developing as a contribution to the whole picture. This is done by jazz composers, actually incorporating other musicians. And it's also done by a poetry reading where others are invited to contribute lines to bring out the meaning of the poem. It's a kind of divine humility here and a respect for co-creators who in turn have to exercise a respectful, disciplined freedom. In our best artistic work, we come closest to creatio ex nihilo. Nicholas Berdyaev claimed that the image of the beast and the poet is imprinted more clearly on his works than his children. And I want to finish by the image of Dorothy Sayers, who draws a striking extended analogy between the mind of the human artist and the mind of the Trinitarian Creator God as formulated in the Christian creeds. I think this is hugely neglected in talking about creativity of the artistic kind. She recognizes in her own and others' experiences a trinity of distinct, equally vital, interactive aspects in the making of a work of art, focusing on her own art of writing. And there's the seminal idea, the active energy and the inspirational power. The idea is timeless, unchanging. It conceives and wills the work as a whole. The end in the beginning. The energy or the word is the conscious dynamic expression of the idea in time. The thought, the passion, the hard work that flows in incarnating the idea into the material form of a book, say. The power is what moves and motivates the author through the whole process and also communicates the idea through the concrete realization of the book. Can I wind up? One paragraph. Sorry. Okay. Final paragraph. Have I got that? Oh, sorry, that's it. Even in mathematics is my final point. The creative trinity is experienced. The idea expresses itself in power but remains ineffable, and I must give it flesh. I grope excitedly in the dark and the chaos, aware of the light that must be turned on, experimenting, conjecturing, and then the light shines in the darkness, and the hard work of creation can begin. And in the fullness of time, the idea is incarnated in the body of a theory and communicated in power. The word has been born. Fleshed out in symbols and words and theorems and proofs, it appears before the world in a hand-waving talk or a book or a paper. The joy and the beauty and the power is received and applied. Imitation can look remarkably like being. Imagination can, allied with imitation, can approach wonderfully near to being. But being is always a transcendent work of creation. Thank you.
Thank you. So we've got 2-3 minutes. We are going into a brief break, so we can probably run very slightly over. But yes, and keep questions brief where possible.
Thank you very much for your presentation. There is an argument that all invention, from its etymological root, invenere, is actually discovery, and ex nihilo creation is actually only really applying to the material cause not existing. God is actually using his own exemplarity to create the form of creation. So we are participating after God, doing the same thing, discovering his own excellences. And so could you comment on that? It's a bit provocative, sorry.
Oh, I love that. It feels right to a mathematician. We certainly feel like co-creators, co-discoverers. For us, it's discovery, and I know mathematicians who claim we discover nothing. It's all in heaven already, and we invent nothing. We're only discovering. But that feeling of invention is there. It's powerful. Feeling that I have a choice. That has to be reckoned with. In mathematics, I can't speak for others, but I've got the feeling artists will all say the same thing. When they finished, it was of them. There's a very profound delegation going on. I love that Genesis quote where I mean, one of the greatest verses in the Hebrew Bible, almost, greatest words. The Lord God brought the animals to see what the man would call them. And whatever the man called the animal, that became its name. Sort of ultimate delegation. It's not God saying, come on, I want you to guess the names or memorize the names even, which our education system, unfortunately, it's different, it's exciting, and it's real discovery, invention. We invent the name. So, with that, yeah.
I'm very close to finishing my sixth children's novella, as in writing one. I've become increasingly conscious that process, unlike writing academic books, which I've done, depends on the muse arriving. Now, that's a different kind of language to a theological take on that, or a Platonic take on that. But it seems to me that artists in lots of different ways all attribute a great deal of their creativity to the muse. How would you identify the muse in your world of mathematics?
I used the word at least twice in my talk because it does feel like we're waiting for the muse. But for me, the muses are also delegated by God in a way. It might be abstract things, or they might be real creatures, I don't know. The ancient Greeks saw them, arguable how they saw them. But I certainly feel I'm dependent on something, someone all the time to help me, to inspire me, to goad me. I feel that this is a cooperative creativity going on. Sub-creation, I don't like that word, but co-creation is better. Thanks for that. Yeah, I'm with you.
Time for one more question from this one. In which case, thanks very much, Gavin.
Thank you.